Joshua Buatsi scores a 12-round unanimous decision over Craig Richards in what was a closely contested and quite entertaining domestic light heavyweight scrap. I certainly didn't envy the judges who had to score this one, though I did do my own scorecard and round by round breakdown, which I'm going to get into now. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about some things I feel both men did well, but could potentially do better going forward. So round one, Buatsi came out and did what many people thought he should do, and that is come forward. Richard also did what people thought he should, and that was maintain distance. I think that Craig Richards showed that he could match and even exceed the strength of Buatsi up close, and I think this proved to be a pivotal key in the way the fight played out. I did have this round even. However, if I was forced to give this round to a fighter, it would be Craig Richards. But on my card, I did have it a 10-10 round. Round two, I felt that Craig Richards was commanding the pace and the distance of the fight pretty well with that consistent long jab. Buatsi was looking like he was quite stationary at long range, quite passive, I want to say. And it was like he was waiting for the perfect opportunity rather than actually creating an opportunity. We've all heard the saying how a good fighter will capitalize on your mistakes, whereas a great fighter will make you make mistakes. Buatsi wasn't really looking like a great fighter in this round, but it's early. But I did have to give this round to Craig Richards. Round three came. Buatsi having better success up close, but because of that strength of Craig Richards up close, you can see that Buatsi isn't able to bully Richards like he has done with other opponents. However, to his credit, I did give Buatsi that round. Round four, Buatsi I had winning this round also, mostly just on the volume, but Craig Richards showing that, in my opinion, even though he lost this round, he's starting to display he has better defensive responsibility. Round five comes, and a big flurry from Joshua Buatsi midway through the round had Craig Richards on the defensive, but it clearly cost Joshua Buatsi a lot of energy. And the shots were very well delivered, but Craig Richards has shown that he's actually quite wily and very defensively minded on the inside. I don't think he saw it as appropriate, if that's the right term, or safe enough to trade with Buatsi. So he pretty much just went on the defensive while Buatsi's let him rip with his shots. And he did a good job. He clearly has an eye for defense, and I think that really showed itself throughout the fight. However, when Joshua Buatsi is visibly tired after this barrage of punches, Craig Richards didn't capitalize. He didn't put his foot on the gas and look to steal that round. So he didn't take much punishment, but he didn't take that round and get his own offense off. So I did have to give that round to Joshua Buatsi. Round six was a close round, but I feel it was stolen by Richards just down the stretch. You know, he's got these neat little jabs and straight shots. And when he lands those shots, they're knocking the head back of Joshua Buatsi, which isn't a good look. You can't play that off. It's a visual feedback that you got hit when your head gets knocked back. So yeah, Craig Richards, he did do a good job of catching Joshua Buatsi with shots like that to steal the round. Round seven was a quieter round from both men, hard to split. So this is actually the second even round, 10-10 on my scorecard. Round eight had Craig Richards winning most of the round anyway with his accurate jabs, but then there's about 40 seconds left of the round and he visibly hurts Joshua Buatsi with a kind of short chopping right hand over the jab of Buatsi and then a follow-up right uppercut. And Joshua Buatsi, as I say, is visibly hurt. His legs go, looking a bit weak in the legs, a little bit stiff, and he does well to fight back after taking quite a few more shots from Craig Richards, but it wasn't enough to undo what Richards had done, so that's another Richards round for me. Round nine is another close round, quieter after the eighth round, but I do have to give it to Richards. Once again, I think he just edged this one. Round 10, I had Buatsi winning, especially after a heavy barrage of punches. He lands on Craig Richards. A lot more of these ones were clean. However, he's visibly tired once again, and it seems to be a bit of a theme throughout the fight. And I was watching Hatman's live watch along, and he said that Buatsi was taking a leaf out of Anthony Joshua's book, where he goes for these barrages of very impressive, powerful punches, but then he's completely taxed afterwards, and he's just to sit and duck. Round 11 comes, and Joshua Buatsi had winning this round just based on a bit more activity. Nothing really too special landed, but he was the busier man, the more active man, and I gave him that round. And the final round, round 12, both men I feel sensed the urgency and how close the fight was in this round, even though they were quite tired to say the least, and they left it all in the ring, credit to them. And I just felt that the more notable work came from Joshua Buatsi, winning him the 12th and final round. So there is my round by round breakdown. I did overall have 2 even rounds, 4 rounds to Richards, and 6 rounds to Buatsi. So on my scorecard, Buatsi wins by 2 points. And now, if you want to be generous, you could give those 2 even rounds to Richards. As I say, the first round I had even, but if I had to give it to one of the fighters, it would be Richards. So a draw, I can understand. Buatsi win, that's obviously what I have. A Richards win, I don't think it's unreasonable, to be fair. This, as I say, was a very closely contested fight. It wasn't an easy one to score, in my opinion, based on what I saw. But I think the right man won. And yeah, Buatsi wins, but what can both men do better? My assessment of the fight is, even though I have Buatsi winning, I was more impressed with Craig Richards. I felt that throughout the course of the fight, Craig Richards was able to do more of what he wanted, because even at long range, I think he had not a massive, but he had a considerably more success at long range. His jab, as I say, was often knocking the head back of Buatsi. Buatsi's just a bit too stationary on the centre line, and he's been guilty of that in the past. But he looked as if he was starting to get out of that habit. But of course, in my pre-fight video, I mentioned how this is going to be an interesting fight, because we're going to see how well Buatsi does against someone who, at the bare minimum, matches him for height, but is also potentially taller. I think there's been some ambiguity about who's taller between these two, but it did seem to be Craig Richards, and he made the most out of that height and that reach, and was a bit more successful at long range. Buatsi, I feel like this is going to be a good learning fight, because he he now knows that he can't impose himself on everyone. He had some rough spots against Kalic, but he was able to dog Kalic out, because I think Kalic really, he was hurt and he was roughed up, but he kind of capitulated a little bit and gave in. Dos Santos, as I addressed in the pre-fight video, wasn't in the same league as Buatsi, and for my money, it was actually quite a mismatch. And then there was Bolotniks, who is a good fighter, but considerably smaller than Buatsi, in a different kind of style to Richards. And so just because you can do it against Bolotniks, fight well at long range and be quite dynamic and skillful, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the same success against someone like Richard. And I feel like this was highlighted in this fight. And it's going to be a good learning fight for Buatsi, as I say, because he's going to learn, I have to come off the centre line. I have to be a bit more defensively responsible. I have to have a bit more variation. I can't be so reactive, because this is what Buatsi was doing. He was active with the jab, but often it was a very one-pace jab. It was coming from the same space, and it was going to the same destination. He did some good work up close, but one of the impressive things about Richards was his defense. He made good use of rolling with punches and then coming back with his own. He was no Floyd Mayweather with the shoulder roll, but he was a very slippery target, and he understands a bit better. I think Richards has a few more wrinkles to his game, where he understands how to roll with a punch and which punch he can throw after that. There were a few times where he was up against the ropes. he'd roll for like a right hook of Joshua Buatsi, and he does a good job of taking his head off the center line when he's punching. He's just not very proactive with it when he isn't punching. But yeah, he'd catch Buatsi at the end of that punch, the final position of that punch, and then he'd come off. And Richards actually fought quite well off the ropes. In the clinches, not so much, because Buatsi wasn't able to completely bully Richards up close because of the strength of Richards. However, his work was still generally cleaner and tighter than that of Richards. But because of the strength, or the lack of a difference in strength, he wasn't able to really dog Richards out of there. But Richards on the ropes was very slippery, very cute and wily, and made Buatsi look almost amateurish at times, almost like a bit of a hot-headed amateur. So specifically, just to wrap this up, I do think that Joshua Buatsi needs to improve his active guard. He needs to be a bit more proactive at long range, give his opponent different looks, and work his way around those long shots. You're not going to be able to just walk people down. At least Craig Richards, he doesn't have the best active guard, but at least he's active with his feet and he's kind of in out a little bit, but he's mostly side to side. Whereas Joshua Buatsi, he has his hands relatively stationary. He doesn't slip much, and he's not in and out in terms of his feet. He oftentimes is on the centre line and coming straight forward. And I think that's part of what let him down. He could do with a bit more variation, especially in the jab, as I say, because there's a lot there with Joshua Buatsi. He's clearly a good athlete. He once again showed that grit, because there were times where it wasn't looking good for him in this fight. He wasn't as busted up as the Kalic fight, but it wasn't the best advert for Joshua Buatsi. But it's his learning fight, and he showed once again that he has heart. I think Craig Richards is probably going to be kicking himself. As I say, in my opinion, he had the more impressive performance overall, but he's still just lacking that urgency. And I think this is going to benefit Craig Richards, because it's not like he took loads of punishment. I feel like he's still got quite a bit left in the tank. Against Bivol, I think he was maybe a little bit wary of the ability of Bivol, because there was at least perceived to be a much bigger gap in class, whereas this was seen as a much more even fight. And so with the Bivol fight, Richards can kind of think, I wasn't at that level yet, therefore I thought I'd just kind of park the bus, if you will, just get by in the Bivol fight. Whereas in this fight against Buatsi, this was a much more of a winnable fight, at least in terms of people's perception for Richards. And I think it realistically was more winnable for Richards. And he's going to look back and think, I could have won this fight, and I could have won it comfortably, maybe not, but decisively. And so he's probably going to look back and think, right, I have to really just get that eye of the tiger, get that urgency, and learn to impose myself on a fighter. Because there were times there where Buatsi, he wasn't completely out of it, but he was tired. And that would have been the perfect opportunity for Richards just to piece him up a bit more, damage him some more, invest, Maybe if he, those mid-rounds where Buatsi was clearly tired after landing his flurries, if Richards had stepped on the gas a little bit, maybe he could have done even more damage in the later rounds. Because round 10, 11 and 12, I gave to Buatsi. If Craig Richards had taken 2 more of those rounds, he could have potentially won the fight. Maybe even all 3 of those rounds, at least on my scorecard, and won the fight itself. So I don't feel like he's going to lose much stock. I feel like he's performed to a good standard and good level, and I think his stock's going to rise. I actually picked Craig Richards to be stopped in rounds 8, 9 or 10. So I'm certainly going to keep an eye on Craig Richards and where he goes forward from here. And maybe I'll learn to not sell him short as much. But that's the fight in a nutshell. I can't argue with Buatsi getting a decision. As I say, I had him winning by 2 rounds. But it was a closely contested fight, and I can certainly understand a draw or Richards winning. That's just my opinion, however. If you agree, disagree, leave it down below and I'll get back to you. Leave it all down there. what do you make of this fight, and where do you want to see both guys go next? I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for listening.